Let's call the Infrastructure and Economic Development meeting to order. The first item on the agenda is the Pledge of Allegiance. All rise. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. We have a motion from Commissioner Duge, supported by Commissioner Romano. All in favor of adopting the agenda, please vote. If opposed, also vote. We'll allow Commissioner Duge to vote by voice. Next item is the approval of the minutes. Motion made by Commissioner Kraft, supported by Commissioner Sauger. All in favor or opposed, please vote on your iPad. Okay, the next item on the agenda is public participation. Are there any members of the public interested in speaking? Going once, twice, 3 times. Seeing none, public participation is closed. Next item on the agenda is budget amendment, roads, vehicle maintenance building. I don't see Brian, but I see Vince. So.
Good afternoon. Good afternoon, folks. Brian is unavailable today, so I'll stand in for him. And let's see here. The amendment to the budget for the vehicle maintenance barn, I believe there was $9 million in the budget, the request to amend it. So 8.5 will go back into the fund balance because we're going to use $500,000 for the contract for DLZ and Plant Morant. I believe, am I correct, Mark? Plant Morant is part of that contract too. So the amendment is to put because we had $9 million budgeted for the maintenance facility, which is obviously not built yet.
Okay.
And we're not going to start it yet.
Well, first let's take a motion, and then we'll entertain any questions.
Mm-hmm.
Motion to approve by Commissioner Duge, supported by Commissioner Sauger. Are there questions? Not knowing how to see if there are.
And also, if there are any questions that I can't answer, Ryan Santos said he will be in front of you folks, I believe, at Finance. So,
okay. I see no questions, so with that, please vote on your iPads. Okay, so
I told him I thought I could muddle my way through it.
How do I vote here?
Yeah, I said you guys could probably help me muddle my way through it. Right? All right, Marv, take it easy now.
Okay, got me. Okay, thank you. The next item on the agenda is contract, Michigan Department of Transportation, Communications Bandwidth Load Capacity Distribution Work.
This is the fiber optic communications band with MDOT, Michigan Department of Transportation. And it tells you the areas it's going to cover through. And it gives the TOC, the Traffic Operations Center, a chance to communicate with the traffic signals. The roadways will be 10 mile in 3 sections, Harper in 2 sections, 12 mile in 2 sections. Mound Road has 3 sections. 14 mile has 1 section. Metro Parkway has 1 section. M59, 2 sections. North Avenue, 1 section. And 23 mile M3 and M29, 1 section. And I believe it is $2,106,500 federal funds. The balance is being paid by us, which is $531,000 $500.
Okay, first we need a motion, if there is one. Commissioner Lucido makes a motion, supported by Commissioner Kraft. Are there questions on the motion? Commissioner Romano.
Thank you, Chair. Mr. Viviano, you mentioned that $2 million of it was covered by the congestion mitigation fund, when actually it's what, $1,575, and you're taking $531,500 out of your Department of Roads, so this doesn't affect our balance at all, does it? You really have that money.
The total cost being $2,165,000, and the portion we are paying, yes, is $531,500.
Doesn't affect us at all for fund balance. That's fine. Thank you. That's all I have, Chair.
Thank you,
sir.
Commissioner Leonetti.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Vince, if you know, on any of this work, you got 10 Mile and you've got Harper and 12 Mile. Any of this work with the fiber optic cable, is it gonna require you to do anything with the roads? You know, I know it's limited in what you're doing. I mean, is there gonna be a space of road that's gonna be repaired or replaced or anything in order to do this?
No, the CMAQ fund is actually going to be attached to some of the existing poles and things that are out there.
Okay.
Like I say, Brian can speak probably a little deeper to it, but it's going to be attached to equipment that's out there. There
Okay,
might be some additions.
All right, but there's nothing going to be done to the roads themselves. It's just all
No.
the equipment near the
Nope,
roads.
it's all the
Okay.
equipment.
That's what I wanted to know. Thanks, Vince. Okay. Thank you, Mr. Chair.
Thank you, Commissioner Duje.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Thank you for being here, Vince.
Oh, thank you.
Question: what is the life expectancy of this?
You know
Of
that.
the fiber optic cable? Is it 10 years, 20, 40? And if you don't know, I'll ask Brian.
You know, it's probably a good question for him. I can note that here.
Yeah, I just, what's the life expectancy of this system?
And I think a lot of the fiber optics that have been out there, I think have been there a real long time. But to give you an exact answer,
and that's why I'm asking.
How long it actually lasts?
Are we going to be involved in replacing some other lines that we didn't think we were going to replace further down the line?
No, and again,
So-
it's CMAQ funds, so
Yeah.
it comes.
Well,
we do have a portion of it, though.
I'd like to know just for our
Yeah, I'm trying to see if I see it here,
knowledge
Andre.
sake. Thank you, Mr. Chairman.
Yeah, I don't see anything about the life in here.
Okay. Okay, seeing no other speakers, a motion has been made to forward it to finance, so please vote on your iPads. Okay, the motion passes unanimously. Next item on the agenda is a contract with Ciperone Contracting 2018 concrete program. First, we need a motion to forward to the Finance Committee. Motion is made by Commissioner Sauger, supported by Commissioner Kraft. Vince, you want to explain?
It's the concrete preservation program, and for 2018, the low bidder was Ciprioni. And typically, well, this here for a second. Typically, we allocate like $2 million a year, and actually, it is $1,963,000. And that project should begin shortly.
Are there any questions, Commissioner Romano?
Thank you once again, Chair. Mr. Viviano, it says here improvements to various concrete roads. Which roads are those?
You know, I'm going to look here, Joe.
I don't see them on, unless they're in, hold on a second. Hold on a second.
I thought they were attached here. I'm trying to get
Hold
to them,
on.
too.
Anybody on, I don't see it on this.
And this is actually for the subdivision streets.
Any of those mine? I'm just asking. I mean, I don't see anything in here to say which ones you're doing.
No, I don't
just-
see the exact locations on this.
Can you get back to us and let us know which
Sure.
ones you're going to do,
Yep.
Mr. Viviano? Appreciate it.
I'm going to mark that here too. Yeah,
Thank
because
you,
it just says even here, Joe, as you go through, it says countywide.
So-
I know there's some other locations on part of the other paperwork.
If it is going to be within my municipality, to let the people know that it's going
Well,
to
they
be done.
do too. They send out the notices, that local municipality will, and a lot of times we do too. But the contractor a lot of times sends that out to them.
And a lot of times they call the people that are supposed to take care of it.
Right. Nope. Absolutely.
Thank you. Just to follow up on that, Mr. Viviano, do you know if this is for specific already selected pieces of road, or is this part of a money that's set aside to handle certain areas as they come up?
It's set aside for locations that we've already looked at and reviewed. Again, it doesn't say all the exact locations in here. That's why I'm still looking for it, but they have been looked at because they've been put forth by the communities, and then we look at them because our maintenance looks at locations to kind of say, well, wait a minute, you guys put these ones forward, but really it should be a couple of those, but a couple of these ones here too.
So these have
Because we get the maintenance calls and the phone calls from the residents yelling.
right. So these have been identified. We just don't have it immediately with us, but you can
No.
get us in time for finance
Yeah,
committee.
and that's why I put here too, locations.
Okay. Are there any other questions from commissioners? Commissioner Leonetti.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. So I'm looking at the two bids. We had Florence Cement Company and, of course, Ciparone, who came
Yes.
in a little bit lower.
A little bit lower.
And both were underneath the engineer's estimate. Have we done business with Ciparone before?
Yes.
Okay, so we have
Yes.
a familiarity with them. Okay.
Yes, in fact, Ciparone is, they're still working there. They've been on Shaner. You know how they've been doing that work on Shaner?
Okay.
That's Ciparone.
Okay.
Very
okay.
good company too.
Okay. Great.
Florence, Ajax, Ciparone,
Okay.
all very good at what they do.
All right. Thank you. Thank you very much. Thank you.
Thank you.
Are there further questions? Seeing none, the motion is a forward to finance. Please vote on your iPads.
Thank you. Number 5, Tito Contracting, item 6D.
That would be the paving,
30
30
mile.
mile, portion of 30 mile from on Powell to M53 to Powell. Let me see here.
Need a motion to approve this?
And again, they were low bid at $2,248,176 and some odd change.
There's a motion been made and supported by, motion by Leon, supported by Commissioner Leonetti. Any discussion? All those in favor say aye. Opposed? Oh, yeah, please, on iPads. Yeah. Thank you. Motion passes. Thank you. E, Proline Asphalt. Need a motion?
So moved. I'd like to speak for a second.
Very good. Good.
Yeah, just a question here. So, this project, $2.1 million, special assessment district. So are all the residents who live around there going to pay for 100% of this project?
What's going on here is we are paying 50%, and Clinton Township is paying 50%.
And then is Clinton
this
Township going
project.
to special assess them, or is that up to them to do what they want?
You know what? It is, they do refer to it as special
Okay.
assessment, so I'm sure they're going to assess the homeowners.
Okay. Do you think, is that standard in the work that the road department does, that when you have subdivisions like this where you have to reconstruct the
Yes.
streets, that it's pretty much half and half? Is that
Commissioner, that's
standard?
how it works?
It
Special
is, and they're
assessments?
talking about, if you look at some of the streets, Thornton,
Right.
Thesson, Lakewood, Abella, it's like, they're in the area of 16 in Harper, 18 in Garfield, and 15 in Garfield.
Right.
But that's typical,
That's typical. Thank you
in the
very
age of
much.
those streets alone.
Thanks, Mr. Chair.
Thank you. Commissioner Kleinfeld?
Thank you. Just very quickly, since that question came up, if you have a road that is borders two cities, and the county, there's a cost share, is it 50, 25, 25? How does that work?
They would be responsible for, if it went through their area, like 50% to us, and
So the cities would
if
probably
they would
split.
break it, right.
Okay, thank you.
Yep.
Okay, motion's been made and supported. All those in favor, say aye. iPads, please. Thank you. Item F, cost share agreement with City of Sterling Heights, rehabilitation 18 mile, 18.5 mile to Clinton River Bridge.
Yes. Okay. And that's actually, that work has started. We've never had a problem with Sterling Heights, so the work is under, it been undertaken already. I know it's happened before. Not the first time you folks seen that. In that contract, we are responsible for, I want to say it's almost 54%, and 46 to the city.
Okay, works well. Need a motion on this?
The motion just had a question also.
Okay. Okay.
So why would that be, Vince, that, usually it's half-half, why, any idea why that's, 53%?
That's,
Not sure?
I'm not sure why it's,
Okay.
but we actually, you can be 50-50, and you could be 60-40 with a local. So I'm not sure what happened here, because
Okay.
there's been other occasions where, sometimes we've done even different than that,
Okay.
but I'm not sure of that exact, I'm trying to look at
Okay.
the
And what would be
administrative.
the life expectancy of this rehabilitation work? How long would that last for, would you say?
This is, I'm not sure if this is a complete reconstruct. If it isn't, which I don't believe it is, almost like some of that work we're gonna do on Mound, where you could get, 6 to 10 years life out of it.
Okay.
With maintenance being kept up, obviously. The more we're on it, obviously, the longer it's gonna go.
Okay. And if I may, Mr. Chair,
ahead.
this is a big project, Mound Road.
Well, that's a different.
I mean, I want to ask Vince, like, 'cause I live and I work right off Mound Road. There's a lot of people who live and work there, and they're tearing that up now. I'm just like to hear from you, how has that been going?
Well, why don't we get through all these agenda
Get him
items?
to you and just ask him after that then?
Yes.
Yeah,
Okay,
because that one's
that's-
gonna come up, I believe, too.
Okay.
Yeah.
All right.
That's actually in here.
That's in here? Okay, thank you, Mr.
Yep.
Chair.
You're welcome. Any other speakers on this item? Well, please vote on your iPad. All right, item G. Item H.
This would be the cost-sharing and participation agreement, again, with City of Sterling Heights with traffic control device, Dodge Park, 800 feet south of Utica Road, with flashers. They're actually solar flashers for pedestrian walk, and that is 100% covered by the city. They're paying it, and we'll maintain it going forward.
Okay, need
But
a motion?
100% the city is
So,
paying for it
motion-
to be put in.
Okay. Motion's been made by Romano and supported by Commissioner Gillette. All those in, please vote. Questions? Go ahead. Commissioner,
Okay, thank you, Mr. Chair. I'm not sure what it means by solar signal. What is that? Does that mean it's powered by solar
Yes,
energy?
it's powered by solar energy.
So
Yes.
it has a battery backup or somehow to back up, I assume?
Again, without being an engineer from that standpoint, it's a good question, but I believe they do have the capability to be backed up. But, it's much like, some of the other signals that when they go down, immediately we get calls and we have somebody out there to fix them, whether it's a light.
So this is a crosswalking signal?
This is a pedestrian walk.
So I
which is
guess the worst
solar
case
powered.
scenario is they have to wait for a sunny day at the corner until.
No, they must have storage power and what have you, I'm sure. We have, a lot of them out there are this currently.
Yes, Commissioner Dujay?
If I'm not mistaken, I think they all have battery backups.
Yeah,
have
they
to,
must. I'm
if
trying to
I'm
see
not
it in here, but I
mistaken.
don't.
That they charge during the day and so on and so forth. But my experience has been they've always got battery backups to all of them. Thank you, Mr. Chair.
Thank you.
Yeah, it doesn't say it in here. I'm looking to see it, but
Any other questions on this item?
I'll note that too, though. But I'm sure it does.
Did we already vote? Okay, all right. All right,
Probably be me chasing a
We
squirrel
voted
or
on it, right?
something.
we voted on that, right? Yeah, okay, yeah, okay. Please vote on your iPad, yes. Okay. Thank you very much. Item H.
Item H is a cost sharing and participation agreement with the City of Warren. This is another traffic control device, solar operated with the City of Warren. 100% the city. Again, they install and we will maintain it going forward. And it's like by
Yeah, we're on item H.
H.
Yeah.
Oh,
it's-
did you? Oh, they got me. Is H Mound?
Rehabilitate Mound Road.
Okay, that's the way they got it here for me. They got H, E, F, G, H. They got H here. Where is Mound? Hang on a minute. They got Mound as I. Okay. Yeah. You want me to take it in that order then?
Do,
I
do H.
do
H is the cost share with the Mound Road.
about Mound. Okay, the cost share agreement with the City of Sterling Heights to rehabilitate Mound from 14 to 18. That job is currently underway also. Ajax was the low bidder. 50-50 cost share agreement. Not sure if you were able to look at the, thank you, look at all the figures, but by the time you take out the federal funds, it was the cost of the project $11,592,000, less the federal funds of $5,086,652. The cost to be shared is $6,505,348. Macomb County Department of Roads, 3252674, and that same figure would be for Sterling Heights.
Okay, is there a motion to approve?
And again, that
Romano,
work has
supported by
begun
Majak.
also.
Yeah, I'd like to question.
Mr. Majak.
Question on Commissioner. Go ahead.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Yeah, so Vince, can you just tell me because that's such a big project, the status of it? They started tearing it up, about 2 weeks ago? When are they going to complete that? You have any idea of the construction progress that you
You
can
know,
share with us?
We can
today?
typically get that, and it's not real hard to get from the engineer. I don't have it in front of me here, so I'm not,
Well, let me
the
ask you this.
completion date, I could find out. It's not that.
Okay, when is this project slated to be completed? Any
Uh,
idea?
That's a good question. I'm not sure if it would be complete by the end of this year, or if it's gonna go into a little bit of spring next year. I guess it would depend on looking at that progress sheet, which typically I don't look at that all the time, but I could find that out too.
Okay, and we think again that this road would last, 5 to 7 years, something like that?
I think you guys were all out there today. I think we were talking about it. I think a lot of times they said 6 to, maybe if we're lucky, we get 10 years. But, probably right around 7, 8 years. Again, depending on the maintenance
Right.
and
But
the
what
seal
hap-
banding.
Truck weight.
But I'll throw this question out to you. So what happens, let's say, in 5 years from now, that we get, $200 to $250 million for the total reconstruction? I think it's 11-mile road to 20-mile road. So when would that take place? I guess, are we going to wait a full 7 years, or once we get all the money, we're going to start it?
Well, I think when that project gets let, again, not being the engineer or anybody, that project, again, I'm not positive, but I would believe if everything fell into a perfect world, Mark might even know, if it was 2020, we were going to try and start with the funds that would come, the $100 million, $200 million project, it's just shy of $100 million, the grant, with the rest being split between Macomb County Department of Roads, City of Sterling Heights, and City of Warren. But that start date,
I'd love to hear Mark. Please, Mark,
a
thanks.
little better than that. That wouldn't be right now.
I know
That's
it's
why.
off topic. I know it's off topic, but we've been discussing in our office, so good afternoon.
Good afternoon.
So we have $97 million from the federal government, which we think we're going to be getting. We won't know until August the 4th. Make sure it has not been withdrawn. But there's still a lot more work to do because we need to get commitments for cost share from all the communities that line Mound Road in that stretch. And they need to go back to their boards to determine whether or not they're going to be able to fund their portion. We're also going to be reaching out to the manufacturing industry on that corridor to see what their needs are in terms of accessing maybe different lanes, or because of where their shipping and receiving is, or if they have plans for renovating any of their property operation. So there's a lot of work to do. The project is going to be phased over several years. We don't really realistically see a shovel going into the ground on Mound until sometime in 2020, probably at the earliest.
2020.
So there's a lot of work that needs
So,
to be done.
we're doing this project here, 14 to 18 mile road, that's supposed to last at least 5 years. But then 2 years from now, 2020, the best case scenario, we could start construction on Mound, maybe not at that spot. I'm just trying to figure out both of these things that are going on and how they interlap, I guess.
I believe that the project that's before you right now for consideration is it's rehabilitation. Sterling Heights made it clear to us they did not want to wait for the federal grant funds to come their way because of the state of that. 80% of that project that's before you is being paid for from state funds. I think it's amounting to about $1 million for the county and $1 million for Sterling Heights to get this immediate fix in place now.
Okay, thanks a lot.
It'll be like a new road. It'll look like how 19 Mile looked after that was rehabilitated. They look like a brand new road. It's not a total reconstruction.
Right.
Let me ask one more question, Vince, because you're an expert in roads. So a road like this that we're fixing on Mound Road, 14 to 18 Mile Road, because the cost is a lot less, is there any type of hazard for a driver? Driving on this road versus a newly reconstructed road with concrete? Not at all?
No.
Okay. Thank you,
No,
Mr. Chair.
19 still looks great, and I got to say, 19 has to be, Elizabeth, you probably know, is it 3, because you were out there, maybe it's 3 years since that was done?
No, it was
2.5?
campaign. It was 2 years.
Yeah.
They were working on it.
Yeah, we started a little bit before that, though.
It was
Yeah.
The reason why I say this, I have a constituent, his name's Richard Bracci. Romano knows him. He's a former councilman in Sterling Heights. He's also an engineer. He just brought it up to my attention. Well, this isn't that expensive, $11 million for 4 miles. That's $2.5 million a mile, I believe, versus $200 million, which is $20 million a mile. So I would just throw that out. That's what he said to me one time, and I wanted to let you know that. So thanks, Mr. Chair.
Thank you. Commissioner Kleinfeld.
Thank you. A couple of things. I agree wholeheartedly. It can't wait. We're losing businesses as we speak. There's no question in my mind about that.
Yeah, county executive was
And,
pretty high on it, too.
With respect to the going the cheaper route or doing the whole reconstruct at some point, I'm of the opinion that if we can build roads that are going to last longer and we're not going to be addressing them
right.
sooner in the future, we're doing a better service to the residents and to the businesses in the community. So I'm all for that. My only thing here is that in all these questions on all of these projects, I think Vince is at a bit of a disadvantage, and I was just wondering if anybody knows if Brian will be here Thursday.
He will, that's what I was saying. He'll be here
Wednesday
for
or
finance.
Thursday. Okay.
And he said he can clarify anything if there's any.
Right, so anything that he's struggling with, it's not fair to him.
Yep.
He's at a bit of a disadvantage, so I just wanted to thank
To
you.
go along with that total grant money and the whole redoing again, Mark Delvin can speak to this too. It's not just the roadway. You're talking signal optimization. You're talking autonomous vehicles. You're talking landscape, pedestrian enhancements. So it's a lot different than just focusing on this road and going in there and fixing the road. There's a lot of other bells and whistles that'll come along with that, with the, and that's how that grant marches forward, you know.
All right, anybody else? There's been a motion made and supported. Please vote on your iPad. All right.
Yeah.
Now the traffic control device on Warren, item I, our agenda I.
Yes, this is a cost-sharing participation agreement between the city of Warren, which, the same thing, it's solar operated for pedestrian, 100% paid for by the city. They will install and we will maintain it.
All right, need a motion by Commissioner Dujay, supported by Commissioner Sauger. Any questions on this? Please vote on your iPad. Thank you, the item passes. Item J, cost share agreement with Washington Township. Resurface 30 Mile Road from M53 to Powell Road.
And Powell Road from 30 Mile Road
To the
to the intersection,
Yes.
32. To the intersection to 3,200 feet north.
Need a motion on this?
That cost is
By July.
$2,700,000 and 600 some odd dollars. And that actual split would be 60% of the township, 40% to the Macomb County, which would be $1,620,360 to Washington Township, $1,080,240 to Macomb County Department of Roads.
Very good. Commissioner Kleinfeld? No, we already have a motion on the floor. Yes. Any questions?
And I don't believe this one has started.
No, it's not.
So, Don, you probably are right in that area.
I was
so.
right there. All right.
Okay.
All right. Please, yes, Commissioner Dujay, sorry.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Vince, is this going to be the same people that are doing D, roadway paving?
You know,
Or have you bid, or has this been bid out yet? Or?
that, I think that's the estimate because they do not have on here who received the bid like they did and the other one. So I don't think,
Because it would make sense
Total
that
cost
if
of the
the guy's
project, I
there
don't-
for one part of it to
and
finish
a lot of
it.
times that does happen.
Yeah.
But here they do not have, this is the estimate, they do not have who received this.
So it might not
So I would
have
have to
been bid out
believe
yet.
it's not bid yet.
Okay.
That's an estimate, and that's more than likely, it is our estimate.
All right, fair enough. Thank you,
Yeah.
Vince. And thank you.
You're welcome. Anybody else? All right, please vote on your iPads.
Right?
Thank you.
You guys are
Good
very
job.
kind.
Baptism.
Gentlemen and ladies are very kind. I just looked at this not too long ago. I've had a
Want to say thank you, too, for
couple of
handling.
long days.
Vince, I want to say thank you. You do a good job handling constituent
Well-
inquiries from my district and getting back to people. And people appreciate the time. They may not like the information you tell them, but at least you appreciate the time as the calls back.
No, absolutely.
I really appreciate that.
I
Get
told
good
them,
feedback.
Telling them earlier, you guys can call me anytime. It doesn't matter. Weekends, nights. You got
Well,
my
peop-
personal phone.
But people say they've been treated respectfully when you talk to them. They may not agree with what's going on, but they always say they were treated respectfully, and that's the most
Oh,
important
I
thing. So
appreciate that.
I want to give you the feedback. Thank you.
Thank you, folks.
Thank you.
I think that's it.
Have a
Go,
nice
Miss
afternoon.
Elizabeth.
See you, church.
Okay. All right, item K, a budget amendment for information technology. 2018 annual capital needs. Good afternoon, Jacob.
Good afternoon, Commissioners. Jacob Van Blurk, for any that don't know me. As an introduction to this, I would like to emphasize that these requested budget amounts or amendments takes into account that we do not have a full year of spending for each category. I've pointed out the ones that have been reduced for that specific reason. The items discussed here today are items that have traditionally been part of our capital budget for many years. Going through the 2 budget cycles that I've been part of since I took over, I believe that certain line items in the capital budget should rather be in operational spending. Our strategic plan was implemented at the beginning of this year, and one of our objectives is to employ financial practices that align with a modern IT organization. To do this, our budgeting, spending, and cost models need to reflect the changes that commoditization as well as infrastructure and hardware puts on them. An example of this is a focus on operational or consumption-based models rather than capital. This will allow for less dependence on capital funding and improve budget forecast. I'm asking you to approve a budget amendment of $1.519 million to the Information Technology Cost Center of the General Fund. These funds are being used on an annual basis to update and standardize equipment and software, keep our environment current, develop and maintain software, including our web environment as well as OnBase, our document management system, and others as stipulated. Some of the equipment are on a replacement schedule, and some of the equipment are covered under contingency funds when they're not under a replacement schedule. So there's, I think in the document that I provided, there's 11 items starting with the PC replacement budget for 2018. And that one is to the amount of $331,000. I gave a list of, how many desktops and so forth, and pricing and so forth, how we arrived at the $31,000.
Okay, should probably handle these individually, or take, yeah, I mean, and what is the, Commissioners, we've got a budget amendment for total amount. We've got all the subcategories within it. How does the board feel the proceeding? Need a motion to approve it all? Yeah. Yes.
So is does the items L, M, N, O, and P all fall under K? No, those are independent of K, is that
No,
correct?
this is just K.
Okay, this is just K.
That's right.
So K is special, K.
Did you click on here? Are you on K? If you click on K, those are all the separate ones.
Can I get a motion to approve the budget amendment? Okay, supported by Leonetti, supported by Kraft. Motion's been made to approve it. Any questions on any of the items within it? Yes, sir.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Jaco, I have no problem with this. We talked earlier about the need for technology and improvements, and Commissioner Sauger talks all the time about retirement benefits and all these things to retain and get new employees. Well, technology is a big factor too. There are students coming out of college looking for jobs that have no idea how to use Access 97. We talked about that earlier. My question to you is for PC replacement. Does the county only use PC, or do they also use Apple? Is it depend upon department? How does that work?
Included in that, there's different devices. I think I provided some quotes and so on that. But we provide desktops, which is your regular desktop computer, the larger ones. We also provide laptops, depending on whether people travel or don't travel. We also provide workstations. A workstation is just like a desktop, just a more powerful workstation. We have areas where people use things like AutoCAD, higher resource needs. For those purposes, we provide those. We also talk about MDCs. That's a mobile computer that's in the officer cars that each officer has in their cars. A much more expensive computer, very robust and so on, so they don't break easily. We provide tablets. Those tablets vary from Windows type tablets as well as Apple iPads. Those are the two popular models that we use. And then obviously there's some specialized situations here and there, not many of them, but we have, for instance, at the Sheriff's Department, 2 redact computers where they redact information before they send it out. It's very powerful computers because of that reason, because they use a lot of resources. But in most cases, those are the ones that we issue.
Thank you, Jacob. Thank you, Mr. Chair.
Thank you. Commissioner Gillette.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. And some of my question was just answered by the previous questioner and your answer to that, but it's really kind of difficult as somebody who's not an IT person up here to know, to know what the consequences if we turn this down are, or what the benefit is if we approve it are. So if we were, let's suppose that the board for some reason decides to turn it down, what happens within the county government as a result of that compared to if we approve it?
Yep. So I can explain a specific situation about 5-6 years ago. The county, we did not have a PC replacement plan at that point in time. We made a decision at that point in time to put a replacement plan in place, and I remember that was brought to the board here. And the main reason for that is at that time we had computers that was over 10 years old. And, technology grows exponentially. And a part of that problem is the faster it grows, the more difficult it is to keep up with different applications. We have in this county today over 300 back-end applications. Those are just applications that you hook up from your laptop or your device to a server. When we talk about desktop applications, things that doesn't even connect to a server, we're probably talking 3,000-4,000 applications in the county. Now, each one of those applications, every time we do an update to Windows, which is a process we are in right now, every time you do that, you have to do test on each one of those apps to make sure that it works before you can upgrade a user. So it really creates difficulty. There's a really very important mechanism between software on a computer and the hardware on a computer. The chips that they build today are for today's type of programming. They backdate, a year or 2 or 3, but if you don't keep your applications or your hardware up, it's very difficult, as a whole, to move that ship forward. And that is the difficulty, and that's what we ran into at that point in time, created a lot of issues for us.
Like what kind of issues?
Stuff doesn't work. Like an application just stops working, and I'm talking things like court view is a good example, that they use over at the courts. The sheriff's case management system, Offendertrack. All those apps, we are currently in the process of upgrading Offendertrack. It takes us about a month to test the application, make sure that everything works well. If there's one thing that's not up to date or not working, like a computer chip or something and it's too old, we have to upgrade the computers before we can do that. And it really becomes a difficult scenario. So that's just one example of the type of thing that happen. I do believe in today's times, if you really want to provide good IT services, we just don't have a choice to not do those type of due diligence. And we have 2,500 computers in the county. It becomes more difficult as you try and upgrade things. It becomes more difficult the bigger that grows. And we have software nowadays this whole process is very automated, so it makes it much easier on my staff, and we can do it. But when you start running into those issues, then you start having to do the installs individually. And some of them don't work, and you have to make sure that you can keep an old computer up and running so people can still do those type of things. So it's just not an ideal environment for an environment like the county.
I see. I know it's a struggle that many people feel at a vastly smaller level when they try and decide whether they should squeeze another year out of their laptop at home. Or, I've got an 8-year-old laptop. It's like, should I replace it or just keep plugging away for another year and wait for prices to fall or whatever it might be? So are we at a point where if we don't do this, that the consequences are going to be immediate and rather severe? Or are we at a point where we should do it, but we can squeeze another 6 months out of the existing systems, make it to next year's budget or something?
Well, in my view, we don't waste those type of things, how we run through that process. We, for instance, sign up only for 3 years of maintenance. When we purchase the computer, we purchase 3 years of maintenance. The last 2 years, we don't purchase maintenance for. So what happens is if your computer breaks in that time, we start swapping out devices. And it works pretty well in our environment. Sometimes you have break fixes in the first 3 years, but those are under warranty. But the last 2 years, we're able to do that. And we make them work if there's problems or so on. I mean, that's a big cost savings from our perspective. But when you start, like I said earlier, when you start going beyond 5 years, the ideal term is 3 years. That's what people recommend. We're on a 5-year replacement schedule. And we make that work today. And I feel comfortable that we can do that. When we start going beyond that, it becomes complicated because now you say, and also you have to understand it, we do these things in bulk. So I can tell you today the pieces that we need to replace for the next 5 years and when they need to be replaced. But if you then start telling me, well, I got to keep these 5 and, press them for 5 years or 6 months longer, that type of thing, we don't do that because we'd rather use them for parts or, break fixes and those type of things when they go beyond schedule. And then after a while, we completely discard them.
Thank you very much, and thank you, Mr. Chair.
Thank you. Commissioner Lucido.
Hi, Mr. Jaco. Thank you for coming today. I guess I'm looking through the different things that were submitted, and none of them seem to be, so far that I'm looking at, a significant amount. And I know we need to submit contracts and bid things out if they're at $35,000. I'm wondering if anything has been bid out, because from what I can see from what's listed here on our agenda, I don't see any contracts or bids.
So the very first, specifically PC replacements. PC replacements, we are on most of our PCs that I mentioned. We are what we call an HP shop. So probably about 6 years ago, we were at Dell at that point in time. At that point in time, we went to HP because we got better pricing through HP. When you make that change, it's again back to the same thing. You cannot have multiple varieties of different computers. Then you cannot automate your processes. You have to do it that way. So what we do with HP is we buy off of REMC pricing, which is something we've done for the past 6 years.
Can you repeat what that was?
That's the
REMS?
organization's REMC. It's a school. I have the information here for the acronym. If you just give me a sec.
Okay.
It's Regional Education Media Center, and I did provide the contract in the documentation that we uploaded.
Was that through the MISD? I did see something that was through them.
Yeah, I think that specific one, I cannot remember that it
Okay.
was through MISD. That, I think you're talking about fiber.
Okay.
That, so that's a contract that we buy off an HP contract that counties, cities, villages, townships, as well as states can buy off of.
So that doesn't need to be bid out, it's just straight through?
It was already bid out.
Oh,
And
okay.
they
And
allow
that was-
other organizations to use that, for the same reason.
Okay. Okay, thank you.
Commissioner Kleinfeld.
Thank you. Was the original submission of this for a different dollar amount?
Yes, it was for a different dollar amount at that point
Okay.
in time. And I adjusted it for time. The original, when we started this process, I think we were going to come to the board around about May or so, and it was postponed for various reasons. One of them was that I was out of the office for one of the dates that was scheduled. And, so I adjusted all the amounts and so on. And like I said in the beginning, I also adjusted it for the fact that I also adjusted for the fact that we have 6 months or whatever left, of this year. So
Okay, so some of the numbers went down. Which one is it, 61? You have UPS power supply replacement
Yes.
went from 30 to 61.
yeah, so that one was 61 originally. I reduced that one to 30,000, and we've actually.
Oh, I was doing it backwards. I
Yeah,
understand what
so-
you're saying.
but-
Okay.
But I just want to let you know why we actually reduced it, and that's going to be permanent. It's not just because of the short year, spending wise. We reduced that one because during the downtown renovation project from the technology side, most of the UPSs were replaced in all the downtown buildings here. And we did another assessment, went through the whole process, and we determined that, a $30,000 contingency for that budget would suffice for us for the next 5
So
years.
if you reduced because of a shortened year, why wouldn't the web development and the enterprise document management be smaller? Because those are actual services, and that'll go to my next question, but they're not physical things like all these other things that are in here.
That's correct. Those are really development services and things like that. Those have been ongoing since the beginning of the year.
So if they're ongoing, why wouldn't you have adjusted the budget amendment if for the shorter year?
The budget amendment is just for the full amount for the year. That's what I mean by that, for the whole year.
But you shortened it for the other things.
I shortened it for the other things because we need less money for the year, for those things.
Okay.
But the full budget amendment, whether some of it has been spent already or not, the amendment that I'm asking for is the full amount for the year of 2018.
But we've been paying for the web development and the enterprise document already, correct?
Yes, that's correct.
So why do you need the full amount for the full year?
No,
If-
it's really, if you want to look at it that way, it's the full amount minus what we've already spent. But I don't know how to otherwise.
That's
state
why
that.
I'm asking that if there was a period of time between your original request and now, so we have a shorter period to cover, why there wasn't a change in those numbers? Are we like speaking different languages?
Yeah,
'Cause
so
I
those
don't-
numbers
I don't-
at the
we might be-
previous time that I sat down, those numbers were projected for the whole year. And I just kept it at that because that's the money that we anticipate spending in 2018 on that whole amount, on the whole
Okay.
web development environment. If you look at the hardware side, we've spent significantly less than what we would normally spend in a budget year up until now. The only one that we really keep up at this point in time, there's two of them, and that's the very first one, which is PC replacement, because that's ongoing throughout the year.
So I think if I understand you correctly, if we didn't if we shorten this to from here to the end of the year, you would run out of money because you've been spending from
Exactly. Yeah.
till now. Okay, and looking at those expenditures, I understand most of them why they would be coming, transferred into capital expenditures. But web development doesn't appear to me to be a capital expenditure because it's not even a physical thing. And software, while it's those last four items appear to me to not be capital expenditures in any way, shape, or form. And so we already know that we've been dealing with these companies.
Yeah.
Why aren't they budgeted in your budget?
It's so those items traditionally, and that's what I said in the beginning, since I took over, those have been capital line items in my IT budget. One of the things we're doing at this point in time is we would like to transfer those to operational spending or general fund spending, rather than putting them in.
Yes, and I agree with you, except this budget amendment isn't transferring it into operational, it's transferring it into your capital expenditures.
No, that's not how I understand it. When it was submitted, if you look at the document that was submitted, it was submitted to be part of the general fund.
Okay, so I have budget amendment for information technology, 1.5, increasing utilization of fund balance with a corresponding increase to information technology general fund capital expenditures, not information technology general fund, another line item.
Let me try to interpret what I believe is happening. So I think when Jaco is saying his operational budget, he means his cost center within the general fund. Yeah. So the reason that most of this or all of it's going in as the capital is because we're, in most instances, acquiring things that we have to capitalize for accounting purposes. PCs, printers.
I'm with you on all of that.
Right.
But I'm not with you on the last four items because those aren't capital expenditures. And I'm wondering why those haven't been in the
capitalize
contract.
software.
Shouldn't they be in the contract services line item?
If it's software enhancements or purchases, we capitalize those things because we're adding life, we're adding enhancements to a system.
Web development?
Mm-hmm. We could move it into contract service. I think it belongs in capital. I mean, we could take a look at it again. It doesn't change the dollar amount.
No, it doesn't change the dollar
certainly
amount.
doesn't change the dollar amount.
I mean, we've got we know we've been doing these contracts, and we know that this is a new thing that it's coming forward here.
Correct.
I think if that was in contract services as opposed to, I just think when you contract with the company on an ongoing basis forever, that's not a capital expenditure. But I might be wrong on the way that I look at it. So, to me, capital expenditures are physical things as opposed to services. These are services.
Which we're capitalizing. So it's.
But aren't capital expenditures something that that isn't an ongoing thing for the most part?
Not necessarily. I will go back to if we put in a brand new system. If, say we decide to replace our accounting system like we did in 2003. Not only did we capitalize the cost of the system, but we capitalized all the contractual services and project management costs to go along with that, because it was part of installing and implementing the system. It's an accounting rule. So on the books, we could possibly put those costs into contract services for that. I would say I wouldn't really encourage that. We'd end up capitalizing it anyway.
All right, and at the very beginning of this conversation, Leon asked about this and all the other letters that are on here, that this was separate from those and individual from those. But isn't this budget amendment, aren't those last items, and it may not be just those last items, I'm just looking at it and interpreting it that way. Don't those contracts that we have after this rely on this budget amendment. So they aren't totally individual and separate. Those are issues, those are items that have been taking place, and you need the funds for those contracts, so they're tied to each
Right.
other.
I think we're on, yes.
Okay,
That's
all
correct.
right, thank you.
Thank you, Commissioner Kleinfeld. We have, Commissioner Leonetti.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Jacob, it's good to see you. I have a question for you on some of the attachments, and I'm going to focus in on page 241 of our packet, if you have that.
Yeah.
Who is Mnj Technologies? They seem to do a lot of the quotes for us with different
I
entities.
think when it comes to hardware and even some software, from a purchasing perspective, that's been their preferred vendor for many, many years.
Okay.
We purchase a lot of the small stuff, but even things like scanners and printers and, things like that, we would purchase from M&J. So usually we work, Polly, obviously that position is, she's not there anymore, but
Right.
we used to work with Polly, and she would, look at quotes and see where she can get the best deal. So it seems
Yeah.
like M&J was the company that most of the time.
I want to draw your attention to this one, especially on M&J and the one on 241. The particular software you're getting is from TechSmith, and it's called Snagit. Are you
Yeah.
familiar with Snagit?
Yeah.
Well, I use it too in my business. Now, the price you got it for is $42.55, and you had 15 units. And just last night when I was looking at this, and then today I was looking again, I went on the website, and you can go to TechSmith's website, and a government entity, which would be us, can get it for $30 and like 50 cents a unit. So I know everybody has to make money here, but it's, it's $12.55 different that M&J is charging us, as opposed to like if it looks like it was an county employee named Anthony Augusti, like if he had just gone to the tech site and went there and downloaded 15 units, it would have cost us $30.55 as opposed to $42.55. Just something to think about, especially with everything being e-commerce now. You can go online and they can download that. Like we did it in our office. We downloaded Snagit, and I had it, 4 things to use in like 5 minutes, and paid on PayPal. So just keep that in mind. I know M&J is going to mark it up. They have to make some profit. But if we can save the county $12,
Yep, no, I made
Makes a
a note
difference.
of that, and we do that. We
Yeah.
definitely do that from time to time. It's just,
Oh, I get it, and I get it. It's just
Yeah.
something like that. I just wanted to bring that one to your attention.
Thank you.
You're welcome. Good to see you. Thank you.
Thank you, Commissioner Gillette.
Thank you, Mr. Chair, and thank you, Commissioner Leonetti. That's $12, but it's actually a 45% increase from what we could have gotten, bringing it online. But
You know what, it was just brought to my attention that Phil saying that it was 3 years ago, that contract, so I don't know, maybe it went down, but still, you're right.
yeah, so I just like to follow up on some of Commissioner Kleinfeld's questions. It's still a little bit unclear to me. Commissioner Kleinfeld asked why a particular item hadn't been a service item, had not been reduced to account for the fact that we have 6 months left essentially in the budget year, yet we're paying for a whole year worth of service. And if I'm correct, you responded saying that we have been currently paying for that service through the 6 months.
That's correct.
What fund has that been coming out of?
It came out of we call it PC replacement, exactly where these line items reside today, which is in our capital budget.
So if you don't need the board's authority to use funds for that particular service, why do we need the board's authority to why do we need the authority now? If you've been able to spend that money without any sort of board oversight, why is it on our agenda?
Those are contractors that's been with us for some up to 7 years. The last contracting house that we started working with, I think it's about 4 years ago. So those have been.
So in other words,
place
it's an older contract that we are obligated to pay for that service for. So you've been paying that because it's one of the obligations of the IT department. Is that correct?
That's
The county?
correct. Those, like I said, described in the documentation, those are contractors that we've been using for many, many years.
So that seems odd that, again, that this would be then in our capital budget. If it's an ongoing contract that we've had for a number of years, it should be an anticipated expense that should be part of our operations, and now it's, sort of suddenly found its way into our capital outlay budget. And I know there's different interpretations of what is capital. I mean, if I put in a new lawn, that might be capital, but if I have somebody mow it every week, that's a service. And it just seems like there needs to be some sort of a better understanding or clarification as we go through the budget process of what is a capital outlay when we think we're buying a new thing versus what is a paying a contract for a service that we're obligated for. So it just seems that it's a little, I would hope that moving forward somehow we can get a little bit better clarification of that. But thank you for answering the question.
We are working with finance on that, on how to do that moving forward.
That would be great. Thank you very much.
Commissioner Romano.
Thank you, Chair. I'll take this, it seems like our check and balances are a little murky here. To me, they are a little bit, and I'm sure everything's in order. Just a question, in fact, a few questions, if I may, Jaco. This one from MNJ for the for the Snagit. This billing date is December 22nd, 2014. Was that when it was billed?
No, that's probably just the last quote that was in our, we have a quoting system where all these things reside. And to be honest with you, our staff updated. I think all the other ones that I send you regarding the computers and so on are all from this year. That specific one was, I just overlooked the date when I sent it to you. Okay. I just need to get you a more recent one.
Thank you, Jake. Jacob, the other question I have is, I'm looking at all of these, and believe me, I'm probably the dumbest one here as far as this information technology goes on, but money is my forte here. And I'm looking at this stuff, and the oldest equipment that I'm looking here, and I'm going through this, you got a beautiful list here, looks like a telephone book. The oldest equipment here I'm seeing is June of 2016. And are we saying that this equipment has been outmoded, this equipment is no good, we've got to get new? I don't understand. I mean, doesn't this equipment have a longevity of maybe 5 to 7 years? I know we keep updating, but the rest of the stuff is all 2018, 2017. I'm a little confused here.
The equipment, so I'm not exactly sure what you're referring to, but if you're talking about PC replacement, that equipment is anywhere from 1 year to 5 years old. And like,
okay, thank you. Yes,
Yeah,
you're giving me a warranty. He's right. He's absolutely right.
Okay.
I'm looking at the warranty expiration date. So let's just put that one aside. Last question I have, and please take this, and I ask it respectfully.
Yep.
We've had requests for proposals drafted up by contractors that made up the request for proposals. So my question is, other than these people professionally, how many people are in your department?
we have, with the new database administrator position that was added, we have 40 people in my department right now.
Do any of your people socialize with these vendors other than professionally? And you see where I'm going with this. I'm a little concerned about the bids that you're getting out there. Is there somebody there related to people that you work with? Or
No.
somebody in your department that's related to them? Or they know them other than professionally? There's no other connection?
No.
Forgive me for asking. I had
No,
to ask.
absolutely. I have no problem with you asking that question.
Thank you. That's all I have, Chair.
Thank you. Commissioner Kleinfeld. Oh, sorry, Commissioner Leonetti, I'm sorry.
Yeah, I just want to follow up again. Yeah, this is printed, as Commissioner Kraft pointed out, this is printed December 22nd, 2014, with the price being $42.55 for the Snagit software. And Commissioner Kraft and I were just looking on their website right now, and for volume, government, and nonprofit pricing, you should be able to get Snagit for 10 to 24. You can get 24 units for $10 to 24 for $30.07. So
Yeah, no, I'll definitely
get
look at
that
that
one.
and see.
At least that one you don't have to
Yeah.
go through M&J on. You know what I mean? But just
I probably
letting you know. Gotcha.
grabbed the wrong quote.
Thank you, Mr. Chair.
Who did these bids in the purchasing department? Because it's not really, purchasing department's really one doing the bids for you. It's not him. So who's your contact at purchasing that you guys use?
For
Who's the-
bids?
Yes, who's the primary person that goes
We have a
out?
company
MJ?
called Mnj Technologies. They do a lot of the bids for us, RFQs and RFPs. We've not done many of those lately, mostly through, how can I put it, projects. But we did one beginning of this year, and we're actually in the process now of doing another one. RFQs.
Are they the same ones that did the bid on the example Commissioner Leonetti used?
No.
Who was that? Who did that one?
That one I don't know. I cannot remember. I'll have to take a look at that.
And where's our county purchasing department in all this? Don't they have oversight over this process?
Yeah, absolutely. We work through purchasing whenever we
And who's
do
your
this.
primary contact to purchasing?
You know, right now, I forgot the name of the person over there that's doing that. No, it's not Jeff.
Maybe it's
No,
worth having a
also not
conversation with them,
Denise, the other
commissioners.
person.
There's a little this,
Mary.
yeah.
She was the only one that we worked with lately. Yep.
All right. All right, thank you. Commissioner Kleinfeld,
Thank you, I'll
Brought
be
you
very
back in.
brief.
thank you.
I don't have our contracting policy in front of me, and I have to go back and reread that, I think, before finance. Steve, the question is, do we require the same approval dollar amount for capital expenditures that are in the general fund as opposed to capital outlay that we do for everything else? Okay, so we do. And Commissioner Gillette's he put a fine point on what I was trying to say. You would pay under capital expenditures to put the lawn in, but now that you're mowing the lawn, that's an everyday cost that I would think we would want to reflect in that part of our budget. But we'll talk later. We'll meet and you can explain to me your rationale for all of that. That doesn't have to be figured out today. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. I really have a lot of respect and appreciation for our IT department, which seems to be doing a very good job at maintaining operations throughout the county, and it's a very important job and a very complicated job. But I'm concerned about how we're moving forward in the budget process with things that are in capital outlay that should be ongoing services, and one commissioner looks up one of these contracts and finds out you can get it online for 40% cheaper than we're having the bid, and it just is causing me concern. So I'm going to vote against the motion, but I don't want it to be interpreted as any sort of disrespect for the department. I realize that there needs to be there are absolute needs that need to be addressed in the IT department. I just think we have to do somehow as a group, the commission, the purchasing department, the IT department, and finance, a better job at figuring out how we're going to sort and present these things. So please don't take it as any sign of disrespect for the very excellent work that you do for the county. Thank you.
Just for clarification, I want to make sure everybody understands, because of my vote, this is to forward it to finance, and there may be questions that arise during this meeting with the other agenda items too. I'm voting to forward it to finance because I also think that there's some commissioners absent. Thank you.
Perhaps we can have the persons from purchasing that oversees these bids, and they could be there to shed some light on what's going. It very well may be that there may be a service contract or something else attached to that bid that you don't know about. That's probably making it. That's probably what it often is, in my experience. Maybe, but we'll find out when we ask the questions. So that'd be helpful. If you could ask them to come, or we can ask them, Jake, however you want to handle it. Anybody else? All right, please vote on your iPad. Yes, as all these things were previously. Uh-oh. Backwards. All right. Very good. All right, thank you on that one. Next item is number I, a government consulting agreement with MAD Habitat for Information Technology Services.
Good afternoon again, Commissioners. I just wanted to preface Jaco's presentation of agenda items 6L, M, N, O, and P with a couple comments. And if I can generalize
Sure, please.
what you have before you today, it might make these next agenda items go a little bit more expeditious. What you have before you is a standard consultant services agreement that came from Corporation Counsel. It's one that we use when we employ, not employ, it's probably not the right word, but when we engage with outside consultants, okay? As Steve Smeagol, Jaco, and myself have been working over the last couple of months trying to get the information that the board has requested relative to not only the F&O capital needs, but what you just heard here so far today. We looked and saw that these companies in LM, NO, and P have been used for many, many years in IT. As a consultant, they've been paid on an hourly basis. I'm going back now probably at least 10 years. Jaco's only been in this position for 3? 2 years. So probably seems like 10, but so what Steve and I said to Jaco, I said, Jaco, given that you are using these same contractors or IT consultants repeatedly in every year, we really need to have, to protect the county from liability, we really need to have a written agreement. In the past, up until this point, and by the way, I met with Vice President Carabelli and Chair Bob Smith last Thursday and said the same thing because I knew they weren't going to be here today. But I said up until this point, they would call the IT vendor consultant to work on a specialized problem or project. They would bill on an hourly basis. The invoices would come into Jaco. As the CIO, he would sign them and they would go to payment. But in probably most of these cases, as you'll see, we have spent more, we have exceeded that $35,000 threshold. So I said in the future, and that's why we're before you today, these need to be put into a standard consultant services agreement if you're going to use these vendors. And that's why that's before you today. It's money. Jaco will be able to demonstrate through this that in the last 3 or 4 years, the amount of money that the IT department has used for outside consultants is diminishing. It exceeded $1 million 4 or 5 years ago. Now I think we're down in the $700,000 or $800,000 range. So we are reducing our reliance on outside consultants as the board has been supportive of bringing on additional people in his staff. And really that's what it's all about. We're trying to reduce that number. But until then, and I don't know that they'll ever go away completely, because as much training as you give your staff, there's always something new in the field of technology that you need to call a specialist in for. So with that, I'm going to turn it over, but that's why you're seeing agreements for the very first time. And it was, again, through our work and putting this plan together for you today that the Executive's Office recommended that these be reduced to consultant services agreements so it protects the county from liability. So with that, I'll turn it over to Jacob.
I just, to add on to that, I just want to also, if we look at the very first one that we are on there, Mad Habit Creative, the person that, that we contract through Mad Habit Creative is a graphic user interface specialist. Now, that might sound, very, what does that really mean? But what that person do is they have a very good feel and understanding for what people want to see when they go to a website. And if you go and Google it and you start looking up, it's really a science to understand what a website should look like and what people want to see when they go to a website. And you can see that the Macomb County website has changed quite a bit since 5 years ago. And just one simple thing, I'm not that interface specialist, but just a very simple thing. One of the first things you do if you go to a website, you want to see what's out there. You have a specific need to get to, and you get to the first page, you don't see it there. One of the first things you do is where's the search, so I can search for whatever I need. And you can see the search function, for instance, on a website, very prominent, pretty big, and something you almost cannot miss, doesn't matter where you go, on the site. That's just something very simple, but something very effective. So that's just one example, but that's kind of the special need. Now look at that specific position too. You know, it's very difficult for me to come to the board and say, I need that user specialist as a permanent position in my organization. You know, I can train somebody that's maybe a web developer, but that's a real special skill. It's very different from a normal web developer. And this person sits down with the web developers, work with them on everything we do. Every, you know, pages create, it needs to be done in specific format, specific way. And, you know, so that's just an example of specialized talent that you get through contracting that normally you will most likely not go and, you know, hire somebody full-time in your organization to do something like that. So Mad Habit Creative is the first one on the agenda there. And what we're doing is we're asking that we approve this contract over the next 4 years. When Mark mentioned earlier about the spending, I can just tell you that the spending in our contracting environment has come down. In 2015, it was 1.1 million. In 2016, it was 770,000. In 2017, it was 761,000. And I think we're asking for these contracts all together at 690,000. So we believe that at that level we'll be pretty comfortable with making sure that we can get everything serviced the way we do that today. And as that change, you know, reduce or whatever the future bring, obviously we will come back. But that is why we're doing these specific contracts.
Okay, thank you. Commissioner Romano had a question.
Thank you, Jaco. Jaco, just, this is gnawing at me, just for the record, if I may. The contractors and vendors that you hire that do IT work, do they ever hire relatives of people that work for IT?
No.
That's what I wanted. That's on record.
Yep.
Got
Absolutely.
it. Thank you very much.
How do you know?
How do you know? That's a good question. How do you know that?
Well, we do that, you know, same thing. I mean, I understand about nepotism. We have a situation, for instance, with prosecutors. We have 3 people that fall under this that actually work. What they do is scan documents. It's, you know, during this time of year. And what we did was looked at the ethics board, discussed that, and decide, you know, the one person is a relative of somebody that works for me. And we looked at that. They cannot report to or work with, you know, anybody that is the relative and those type of things. They have to report to somebody else. There's specific ethics committee reasons or things that you have to abide by. And in that case, that's one case, we did that.
If I may, Commissioner Romano, the last couple of questions you've made relative to what you just said have made me a little bit nervous.
Makes me nervous too.
We know, but with all due respect, we're not running a flim-flam operation. Every single vendor, every single vendor.
I did not say you're running a flim-flam
No,
operation.
I didn't. You didn't
said I
say
did.
that.
You said
I said
We're not
it
running
makes
a
it
flim-flam.
sound.
Go ahead.
But we have every single vendor, whether we buy toilet paper from them or they're providing IT services, fill out a vendor disclosure form, and it asks that very question as part of it. All of those are on file, and we require every contractor, every vendor to fill that out. If they're going to submit a bid to us, it is part of the RFP, just so you know.
And the question was
So-
just answered, and he said no, and he just came back and said, yes, there's a relative of somebody IT.
No,
You asked vendors.
You
I
asked
said,
me if the
does
vendors
does the
hire somebody.
contractor or vendor that does work for IT, is there any relatives of IT that work for that vendor or contractor?
Sorry, I understood it was relatives of the vendors.
So that's my question. Is there anybody?
But either way, what I just explained to you is one person
That's good.
that is a son of one of the project managers that work for us, and we separate that relationship. The person is not allowed to report in any way, shape, or form
Thank
to
you,
the
Jacob.
relative.
That's all I have. Thank you, Chair.
Thank you. Commissioner Gillette.
He likes to do that to me. He does it for fun.
It was an accent, truly. It's not
Okay.
Italian, I can't recognize it.
Okay, thank you. We usually get the vendor disclosure forms, and I'm not seeing those here. Is there a reason for that? Am I missing it, guys? Because
It's not in there.
No.
Okay. All right, so if,
I didn't attach it when I submitted it.
okay,
They
we,
didn't have a 9-inch nail to put it in the agenda.
okay. And I don't know what kind of training we do for, mostly department heads, quite frankly, for the contracting policy and procurement policy and everything like that. So we don't have to figure that out today, but maybe that's one of the things I want to take note of to have discussions with you in the future on. But since these were existing, if we could get those disclosure forms by Wednesday, by Wednesday, I'd appreciate that. We're paying $60 an hour for the individual. How many hours do we use the individual for?
And this individual, for, on average, about 35 hours.
35 hours a week. So does that mean he doesn't have other clients, or he has clients that he only works?
Yeah, no, he does work all over the place. But
Okay.
I'm just talking about what the person do for us.
Okay. If we've been doing this, and first of all, I'm very much appreciative that you recognize that we should be doing contracts on this and setting that up. If we're not going out to bids on these because we've had existing work with all of these individuals that we're talking about, L through P, how do we know that we're getting the going rate at this point?
That's, for me, a difficult question to answer, but I can tell you that whenever we've, in the past, that at least the ones that I've been involved in, when, we got people, that was a big item on the agenda to make sure that we.
Well, the
hire
reason I'm
people at
asking is
competitive
it appears that from the inception, we never had contracts, so these never went out to bid. So rather than doing 4-year contracts, wouldn't it be a smart thing to do a shorter contract to give us time to go out to bids to find out what the going rate is for these individuals? So all of these L through P are lengthy contracts. And since they never went out to bid to begin with, wouldn't we want to do like maybe a 1-year contract so that we're taking time to do it properly and go out to bid for these? And it doesn't matter to me who answers.
Yeah, there is a clause in the contract, to the contract that we propose for either party to, end the contract.
But why are we starting them with 4 years? Given the fact that they never went out to bid, and we know, and this is not the fault of administration that's sitting here, and I want to make that very clear, and I'm very appreciative of that. But because we have that knowledge and we're correcting something here, why are we giving these, I believe they're 4-year contracts, why are we starting with a 4-year contract instead of saying, hey, maybe we ought to put these out to bid and find out what the going rate is? Is it just because it's easier because you have established relationships, or is it because they have detailed knowledge of the county stuff because you have established relationships? There's got to be a reason why you don't even want to take the time to find out what the going rate is for people.
These people do have very detailed knowledge of, how we do our business and what we do.
Okay.
As well as expertise.
Okay.
But the reason, I just have to tell you, I'm the one that did that.
Okay, I would like you to consider it, before finance, I would like you to consider it, because I'm struggling with 4-year contracts that we know that never went out to bid on any of these companies. So, yeah,
And Jacob's bigger than I, and I don't want him to hurt me after the meeting, but certainly, as I hear what you say, Commissioner Kleinfeld, and as a way of compromise, I'm not opposed to dividing these numbers by 4 and doing requests for qualifications in the next 12 months, or 6 months from now, doing requests for qualifications, and when we come back up here a year from now, or maybe we will measure it so that it's on the annual budget cycle. We
okay,
do it
because
by-
you may
by year.
find that there just
Right.
isn't anybody
That-
else that has the expertise.
No, that's true, but we're going to do requests for qualifications. And it's not, as you know, it's not always based on who's the lowest hourly rate and who has knowledge of the type of systems that we have.
I agree
here in
with
the
you
county.
100%.
So-
This is a service. This isn't a hard purchase.
Right.
So you're not going to get judgment on me on that.
Right, but as good fiduciaries, everyone in this room, yeah, I think that's fair. That's a fair question.
Okay.
And to get this off the ground, and again, these are monies that get expended every single year by people in this field, whether
Right.
it's the names here or somewhere. So it's not a matter of, I forgot what I was going to say,
Well,
because I'm worried he's going to.
I want you to know going in,
Yeah.
I'm not going to judge you for that. Services,
Yeah.
it's very important that you get the right people.
Exactly.
And you're not throwing money at the wrong source.
Right,
So
right.
I appreciate that. This particular contract, is this one of the ones that is in the budget amendment? Or are they all in the budget amendment?
All of them are in the
They're
budget.
all in the budget amendment. Okay, so this is very specific. This is an individual that advises you. And I can't, for the life of me, figure out why that's a capital plan expenditure or capital. It's an individual. There's no physical anything. It's,
That's semantics.
Yeah,
yes,
the very first one.
yes.
I'll work with Jacob between now and finance.
Okay, and
I've looked up some accounting guidance, and it's,
okay. Okay, and with respect to us getting the cost down from 5 years ago, I just want to clarify something. When we had that fire and realized everything was all located in one place and we were very vulnerable, I thought we made a huge technology investment. And when we made that huge technology investment, I thought when we got it all to where we wanted it to be, that the cost would naturally go down, because we were pouring a ton of money into technology to fix what hadn't been taken care of for years. Am I wrong about my memory on that? See, I wouldn't want you to come to me next year and say, well, we spent $65 million on these buildings and we didn't do that this year. Do you see what I'm saying? I thought we put a huge investment into it.
there's a huge investment in the upkeep and the ongoing maintenance and cost of
So they're
Not
close.
the expert, I mean, Jacob's the expert, but
Yeah,
that's what it seems to be.
maintenance is one of the costs that obviously increase when you do something like this. But, I do believe that the cost is coming down. My budget that I submitted this year, just very recently to Steve's office, reflects that. Cost in general is coming down. Now, the one thing is, we made that investment in 2013, for that.
So that's the year
systems that
you're
we put-
using, exactly 5 years ago.
So that investment that we made, we 5 years down the line. The RFQ that I told you about that we're in process of doing now is for a vendor to help us moving forward. And criteria is very specific about cost savings is one of the major factors for us, is to reduce the cost. When we did that, at that point in time, we created 2 data centers, for instance, just as a quick example. We believe that we can do this with one data center and the other one not being active and still have the same reliability that we have today. by work that was done by my
Okay,
staff.
I didn't
So-
want to get too far off of what the question was 2013 was that specific
That's
year.
correct.
So that's why, when we talk about, well, we're getting the cost down from a year where we decided to make a huge investment.
That's correct.
So, just one more question for you, and then I have two for Steve real quick. The first is, you walked into this job, these were already existing. Were you aware that there were no contracts for these?
I wasn't aware, I would say probably for the first 10 months or so. And as I
Okay.
started working, because that's the time when we started doing our strategic plan. It took me about a year to do that. And obviously, analysis of what's going on in our office and so forth. And that was one of the things that we identified.
Okay, and then two questions for Steve, and I'll let you go. The first is, we kind of talked about before, you approve if something, like if the executive approves, you approve, and I had asked if there was something in finance to flag situations. In this situation, or situations similar to it, is there a mechanism, like in your computers or something, that alerts you when somebody hits that 35 and may need approval from the board so that you can let the county exec's office know?
Yeah, there's nothing automatic at this point in terms of cumulative spending for a year. So we're working on some reporting mechanisms to make that happen. But if there's a PO that we can flag that's sort of a workflow issue, but this cumulative spending is a little more difficult to kind of get. We can run reports.
Okay, and do change orders not require your approval?
If there's a budget increase, there's usually a contract amendment that goes with a change order, typically. And that would run through the normal process. I mean, as far as generally speaking,
Oh, okay,
it should. So in my mind, a change order is a contract amendment. And I've seen contract
but
amendments come through.
I've seen change order they're different than contract amendments that, with the approval process. That's not important for this agenda item, so
Right.
that's just something for me to make a note of when we sit down. And then, likewise, forget the cumulative. Do you not have a mechanism in your office to let you know that there's no contract when you're paying out a bill?
No.
If you get a bill for something and it's been approved, because remember, our thought process here is who's sitting in these positions 50 years from now. And I look at the finance department because I believe that there are legal requirements of the finance department. Like, I know when I was in the city, there was a state dollar amount. The city's was different, but there was a state dollar amount that no matter what the city said had to go to the council for approval. So it's the finance department's job. I think legally there would be a job there that they have to flag it. It could be a mistake, a missed thing, but it would be your office that would catch. Is there another office that would do that? Is there an office that would catch it?
No,
Wait a minute.
we don't have a mechanism to flag an invoice that's being processed for payment not being associated with a contract. You could go the other way, but if somebody submits an invoice, any of these, Mad Habit or any of these that Jayco's asking for a contract to be approved for, if someone submits us an invoice, it could be for professional services, it could be for bedding at the jail, it could be for
Yeah.
office supplies. There's no connection back to whether there's a contract or not.
So if you get an invoice, say from Charlie Jones, that's the new sheriff, and you get an invoice for $150,000 for a purchase, you don't have any way to know if there was ever a purchase that took place. You just cut the check because the approval has come to you?
Yes.
And if that's the situation, I appreciate the honesty, because I do think it's something we have to look at. And it's not our realm to look at it, and I recognize that. But I'm seeing a red flag that I'm very concerned about, because I am not concerned about this administration, but I'm concerned about the administration 20 years from now. So that's something that I I saw the look. That's all right. That's it. Thank you.
Thank you. Commissioner Gillette.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Just two thoughts and I guess related questions. I look at all the items that are coming up before us, and they all have the same language for purpose and justification, kind of broad language. We need it for technical stuff. So they all look the same to me. But then, Jaco, you came up here and described what this individual does in an excellent description. It really made it clear to me why we need that particular specialized person for this particular role. So I hope that maybe we can get that on the paper somehow, so you don't have to describe every single one, because they all look the same on the paper, the same language. But you did a great job of explaining exactly what the person does, and really concisely, in a way that made it clear what they do. So thank you. You did a great job with that. I guess my other note, though, is I appreciate Commissioner Kleinfeld's input, because I had no idea that these contracts had never been bid. I mean, it predates you. It predates, in many cases, a lot of the individuals involved in this. And I recognize that they may have specialized skills that are highly compartmentalized to provide these particular services, but just the process of going out to bid, we may find this individual comes back with a lower bid next year, knowing he's got some competition, and maybe the same person just for less money. And it's just very challenging, to ask elected officials to approve spending for no bid contracts. I mean, it just doesn't look good, and it doesn't feel right. And I know that it's not you. This has been a situation for many years, and it's not any particular individual, but it really does need to get addressed to make sure that we are bidding out these contracts.
Well, it's, technically speaking, Commissioner, it's not, these weren't bid out to begin with because they're professional services. So there's a difference there, so we got to be careful. I mean,
that's
some
okay.
are, some
Your
aren't.
point is well taken. Your point is well taken with professional services, and yet professional services contracts are not something that oftentimes requires to be bid out, but it's not prevented from being bid out. And if these are ongoing for a number of years and we're just renewing them, maybe it's time we address that. But your point is well taken.
Thank you.
So thank you, Mr. Chair.
You're welcome. Commissioner Kraft.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Some of the other commissioners asked my questions about the bid process and things like that. My question to you is about your submission process to us, to our agenda. It's my understanding that the heads of the department or staff will submit electronically through Civic Clerk, and it'll go up the chain through various approvals and things like that, and then it comes to us. My question is, you guys are the IT department. How come these contracts came through via paper, via interoffice mail? You guys, it just, blew my mind a little bit. So I'm just curious why that process happened the way it did.
Yeah. It just happened that way, to be honest with you. In IT, there's two processes, that paper process that we used to have, and I think many of my people are used to that process, and they've just used that process when it was submitted.
So is that why we need to approve the budget amendment to give you more money? Thank you, Mr. Chair. Thank you, Jacob.
I do take note of that, and it is very important.
Thank you, Commissioner Leonetti.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. I just want a positive note. I want to thank the executive, Mark, for putting these things to contract. I think it's a good thing. I think you too, Jake Oaks, to have these things to protect the county, and it also goes with what we were talking about, allowing the commission to at least see what the professional service contracts are as they go forward. I don't think we should second guess what you do. That's not what we're here to do. But at least seeing it and putting it in a contract form to protect the county is the right step forward. Thank you.
Thank you, Commissioner Leonetti. Anybody else? I don't see anyone else on the list. Need a motion to approve this item, or forward it to finance. Moved by Commissioner Sauger, supported by Mr. Duje. Fine commissioner from the Ukraine. Thank you very much. Next item is N, Government Consulting Services with Michigan Consulting Group, LLC. Jaco, you can take us through that one.
Yep, so it's Metro.
Did we do M? No, excuse me, M, I'm sorry. Got M. That's with Metro Technologies, not to be
Yeah.
confused with Habit Technologies.
Yep, so it's Metro Technology Services. Metro Technology Services done a lot of work for us in the past, especially during the fire, doing the RFP for us, the rushed RFP, if you remember what happened during that time, was one of the first things they did. Also, the project manager that managed from an IT standpoint the Comtech rollout for us. Our equipment that we just talked about, what was put in place at that point in time, they're the ones that assisted us in acquiring that and getting it implemented in our environment. They company that's very familiar with government and also bigger type contracts, professional project managers, and assisted us with those. They were also the vendor that did the downtown renovation project from an IT standpoint. They were our project manager for that. With this company, we have a few different positions that's in play today. There's project management services, as I stated earlier. There's also a person that work on our document management system, that very specialized skills that this person has to help us. What we need to do at this point in time, we implemented this document management system quite a few years ago in the courts. We're in process of doing this, right now at the prosecutor attorney, a solution that was developed and is only now implemented. And then now we need to do this for the rest of the county. There was talks earlier about can we check, for instance, things that cumulatively comes from different sources, and you get a flag or something like that. That's what a document management system can do for you when you start integrating that with other systems that you have. One of the things you have here today is your board sync system and so on that really automated a lot of your workflows. But what document management system do is on a larger scale, it can, between these different applications, do workflows for you. So it's those type of things that we are working through. It's a combination of our staff as well as contract staff, because we've trained some of our staff, but they need experience as well. So that will come over time. Those are the things mostly, and then a web person that helps with a specific item, which is Gov Delivery. It is when you sign up on a website, for alerts about something that's going on, those type of things. It's a pretty interesting thing that's used on websites today, and that was what that person is doing for us.
Thank you. Commissioner Leonetti.
I was just going to make a motion to forward it on to finance.
All right.
Yep.
That motion's been made by Commissioner Leonetti, supported by Commissioner Sauger. Commissioner Kraft, do you have a question?
Yes, I do. Thank you, Mr. Chair. Jaco, I think you mentioned earlier, too, that you said this company helps you with the bid process in doing that. Is that common, Deputy Delden? Is that common for other departments to do that as well, where we contract with the company to help with the bid process? Or is that unique to IT?
What we do with human resources, the contract consultant to go out for bids.
My experience, my previous experiences from the school district, I mean, no one in the school district knew how to develop IT specifications because it's such a specialized business. So, but there have been times in my experience when we have hired an outside consultant to develop bid specifications for a specialized project that we're doing. And Almost everything about, other than replacing computers and printers, almost everything about IT is specialized.
Sure, yeah.
It's not unusual.
Right, I understand that. I just wanted to check in terms of other departments if this was something that we did across the board or if this was just unique to IT. Thank you. Thank you, Jaco. Thank you, Mr. Chair.
Thank you. Motion's been made and supported. Any other speakers? I don't see anyone else on the list. Please vote to approve or disapprove. Forward. Forward. Thank you.
For NOP.
Thank you very much. Motion to forward to finance has been approved.
Mr. Chair.
Yes.
I was just going to say, I know we're going on to N, O, and P.
Yes.
I was going to make a motion to forward N, O, and P onto finance. I think all the commissioners asked some of the same questions that we did with the Mad Habit. And so unless there's something specific, I'm going to make a motion to forward N, O, and P onto finance.
Without objection, if there's any other objection from the commissioners, I'll agree to that. Commissioner?
I don't have an objection, I just wanted to make a comment before we vote.
All right, that's fine. All right, we'll do that. Commissioner Kleinfeld?
First of all, I would like to thank administration for bringing these forward and attempting to correct that. I really appreciate that. By the same token, I ask that you not get too frustrated with us when we're talking about process. Because I think there are other areas where I've had questions on the process, and I think they all tie together. And so I just ask you not to get frustrated. And when I say we don't, because this is when I see the eyes rolls, when I say we don't think this administration has done anything wrong, I'm saying that because I want the audience to know I'm thinking 50 years down the road. I'm not saying that for any other reason. So please don't get frustrated with us in our attempt to make sure we're doing our job and correct things as well. Thank you.
Thank you.
May I make one comment?
Sure.
Relative to all these items that are being forwarded to Finance Committee, last week Friday, late afternoon, Jaco was in a panic because he got a call here from board staff saying that they wanted to move today's infrastructure meeting to Wednesday, and Jaco very respectfully said he's not going to be in the county on Wednesday. He's out of town. So what I'm requesting from the board office is that if by tomorrow morning you can get any questions that the board has relative to what's before you here today to Jaco and myself, so he can get written responses, because he will not be here Wednesday to answer any of these questions, and because of the complexity of the operation, I know I won't be able to answer them either. The other thing, if it is the pleasure of the board, I would make a recommendation, and again, I'll compromise, that maybe we look at putting these contracts in effect from September 1st of 2018 through December 30th of 2019. It gives us 15 months. We're under contract. We're protected, so to speak. And then Jaco can work with the purchasing department in developing RFQs to go out for these types of services, so that when we come to you about a year from now for budget review for the 2020 budget, you'll see you'll see who we're recommending, and we'll just include these contracts into his budget presentation. So if that's the pleasure of the board, then put that on the list, that it's something that we're agreeable to.
Good.
Okay, thank you.
It'll save a lot of heartburn. Thank you. We have a motion for the three items. It's been moved and supported. Please vote on your iPads. Thank you, Commissioner. Thank you.
Thank you, Commissioner.
Item 7 is correspondence. We've got 4 pieces of correspondence.
Support.
All those in favor, please vote on your iPad. New business. Any new business before the board? Yes, Commissioner Leonetti.
Shortly before the meeting, I received a call from Chairman Smith, and he wanted me to address some things to the board. Number one, well, what it relates to is the Detroit Free Press article. I don't know if you're aware, there was a Free Press article about the lawsuit that we have going on between the executive and the commission. Bob wanted to reiterate to the rest of the members of the board that they're still in the process of talking. He's still talking, to either the attorneys or directly to the executive's office to try to see what they can do to resolve it. He also wanted to state that it's not a transparency issue. Well, not necessarily a transparency issue. It's not necessarily like what Commissioner Kleinfeld was saying. There's no accusations of anything being done wrong. It's a matter of the process that, of course, we're suing on. And so he wanted to make that clear. It wasn't necessarily clear, I guess, in the article, but that's what he wanted me to convey to the board. And so I told him I would do it because he caught me 10 minutes before I came in here. So thank you.
Thank you, Counselor. Commissioner Romano.
Thank you. At the same time, when I spoke to Chairman Smith this morning, I also asked him, when we get correspondence from the exec's office, before there is a direct response from Mr. Smith, I would hope that he would at least consult a few of us commissioners before he responds, because sometimes a matter of letting it set for a few hours or days kind of cools it down a little bit. I don't like this give and take between the exec's officer and our chair, and that's what it looks like it's coming to, and I don't appreciate it. So I think Mr. Smith is going to take that into consideration before he responds to any of the exec's emails or texts or what have you, at least at some of the commissioners, and then we can disseminate the information to the rest of the commissioners and let us all know what's going on. Thank you, Chair.
Any other new business? Commissioner Sauger.
I just want to reiterate what Joe just said. I hate reading about what's going on with this board in the paper. I knew nothing about this. I got the news, nothing's in there. So my wife says, get the free press. I want to work the crossword puzzle. I said, they're the same damn thing, but I bought it anyway. And then I'm reading about this. This is pathetic. This shouldn't be happening. So I hope they get things worked out. Thank you.
Well, it takes two to tango, and we will figure it out. So, all right. Anybody else? Seeing none, we'll close your business. Public participation. Anyone from the public wish to be heard? Anyone from the public?
I think it's the only time I can speak to you where you can't say anything back to me. So, I thought it was. I'll be quick, but my day of frustration, to Commissioner Kleinfeld's point, started out about 6:30 a.m. this morning, when as soon as I fire up the laptop and I read the Detroit Free Press article, and the one thing I've learned over my career is the media never lets the facts get in the way of a good story. And the first couple of sentences talked about a $9 million overrun. When you use that term loosely, an overrun to me would be if I came up here and told you it was going to cost $700,000 to renovate this room, but it really ended up costing $900,000 and you didn't get any more for it, that's a cost overrun. Just very quickly, and you can gavel me down when my 2 minutes are up. But along the way in this $65 million program, and I've said it to many of the commissioners, we talked about this before. Some of the commissioners said, we know you're going to work on old buildings, 83 years old, the old county building. You're probably going to discover things that the architects and the engineers never even planned for. But also be cognizant of, if there is something on a capital project plan 2 or 3 years out, by all means, we can get economies of scale if we just have the contractors do it while the walls and the ceilings are open. Carpet is a perfect example. We were not scheduled to replace the carpet in the circuit court building. It was only going to be on the floors where we were adding new courtrooms. But Lynn Bricks said, I'm going to have to pay to have all this brand new furniture moved out again to have new carpet put in 5 years, because it wouldn't even last that long. So that was an added expense. But however, in December of 16, and I'm going to send all this information to the board members, and I know that many of you were not here in December of 16. We gave a very comprehensive update to the Board of Commissioners in a public meeting. You had voted to receive and file that in December of 16. We talked about the original scope, We talked about the additional scope items that were folded in from the 5-year capital plan, and then other things that we ran into. We gave you a total in December of 16, and it said 65 million was the original budget, but we now have added $4 million in construction projects, and it's for these reasons. So in December of 16, the board was aware that it went to 69 million. In August of last year, about 11 months ago, we gave another comprehensive update, kind of same thing, the original scope, the additional scope that had happened since December of 16, the fact that we told you in December of 16 it was 69 million, and now because of these unforeseen conditions, new costs that were associated with the project, we're now at 74.1 million. So since October of last year, the board has been aware that the project has been at 74.1 million. So the article today, and again, I'm not, that's the media for you. The article alluded to cost overruns. We increased the scope. We increased the scope. We spent $9 million more on services and construction enhancements. That's it. Now, are there other disagreements? Yes, and that can be discussed at another time. But I want you to know that the overrun term that was used loosely just sends a whole different message in government sector. And we are not Wayne County or any other place where stuff has happened. We are not. We're better than that. But I think if we can continue or work on enhancing the communication between the Executive's Office and the Board of Commissioners, there will always be disagreements, fundamental disagreements. But airing laundry in public does not serve our public well. Does not serve our public well. I appreciate working with all of you. I will be upfront. I will be honest, and sometimes I wear my feelings on my sleeve. But you know what? We're all human. So with that, I can't entertain any questions because you don't speak. So yeah, no, I mean, it doesn't matter to me.